Welcome back to another episode of A World Gone Mad, Season 2, Episode 71. I'm your host, Jeff Allen Wolf. I give my commentary on national and world news, plus politics. So let's not waste any time. Here we go. United States won't put up with perceived resistance from Zelenskyy. The fallout from the Oval Office meeting between Trump and Zelenskyy. President Donald Trump said in a social media post today that the U.S. will not put up with perceived resistance by President Zelenskyy of Ukraine to ending the war with Russia, making clear his hostility toward the Ukrainian leader remains after a heated meeting in the Oval Office on Friday. Now, Trump's national security advisor said today that Zelenskyy needs to express regret before talks could resume on a mineral deal, and added that he welcomed a Europe-led effort to end the war in Ukraine. Fake controversy by Trump. Donny Boy needs to continue this narrative so his base stays revved up, angry, and ready to show their claws. Donald the con man needs to turn his disastrous Oval Office meeting with Zelenskyy around. That disaster of a meeting make Trump look like a piece of shit. Him and J.D. Vance with how they treated President Zelenskyy. So by continuing this narrative and attacking Zelenskyy and saying Zelenskyy needs to express regret and state that he really wants to end the war before Trump can proceed with the mineral agreement is pure unadulterated garbage. It is a made-up spin from fairy tale land. And you have to be on heavy drugs or be drinking a lot to believe any of this junk coming from Donald's mouth. And to add fuel to this fire from Donald, the Kremlin has accused Zelenskyy of seeking war, not peace, after Friday's dispute in Washington. The Kremlin has described Friday's dispute between Ukrainian President Zelenskyy and U.S. counterpart Donald Trump in the White House as unprecedented, adding that it shows the immense difficulty of resolving the war in Ukraine. Speaking at a Monday briefing, spokesperson Dmitry Peskov said the conversation showed Zelenskyy's lack of diplomacy, claiming it was a fairly unprecedented event. Of course, Zelenskyy has demonstrated in many ways a complete lack of diplomatic skills at the very least. Peskov further criticized Ukraine's leader, alleging that he does not seek to end the conflict. The Kiev regime and Zelenskyy do not want peace. They want war to continue, Peskov said. Therefore, in this situation, of course, only Washington's efforts and Moscow's readiness will clearly not be enough. And here we go. Adding to the fairy tale land of Donald Trump's assertion that Ukraine wants to continue the war, you now add the big bad ogre, Russia, Putin, who comes in and says, yep, the fairy is right. The Kremlin spokesperson also suggested that pressure is required to shift Zelenskyy's stance. Trump and other U.S. leaders sought to pile heat on Zelenskyy over the weekend, suggesting he may need to relinquish power after the disastrous Oval Office meeting created by Donald and J.D. But his European counterparts were not making the same assertions, rallying support behind the leader. At least they have balls, Donald. We see the difference between real leaders, real diplomats in Europe and Canada versus Donald the delusional, just making garbage up, throwing it against the wall to see if it sticks. Now on the ground, the fighting continues, and the civilian death toll is mounting in Ukraine. Russia has launched more than 3,000 drones and at least 35 missiles at Ukraine since the phone call, according to the Ukrainian Air Force. As well as the more than 75 civilians killed, nearly 300 others, including many children, have been injured, according to a CNN count based on statements from Ukrainian officials. Now, Russia has consistently denied targeting civilian infrastructure, despite the ample evidence, and has pointed to the deaths on its own territory from Ukrainian attacks. Who are you going to believe, people? Mock controversy, fake alignment between Russia and Donald. This is staged between Russia and Donald after the disastrous Zelensky meeting in the White House created by Donald's delusional way of handling things. Zelensky says Ukraine is counting on U.S. support on the path to peace. Now, Ukrainian President Zelensky said today he is counting on U.S. support to end the war with Russia. We are working together with America and our European partners and very much hope for U.S. support on the path to peace. Peace is needed as soon as possible, Zelensky said in a post on X. Talks and other steps were underway to end the war, he added. Now, it's very important we try to make our diplomacy really substantive to end this war as soon as possible, Zelensky added. We need real peace, and Ukrainians want it most because the war ruins our cities and towns. We lose our people. We need to stop the war and to guarantee security. The tweet comes a day after Zelensky told reporters in London that a deal to end the war was very, very far away. You notice how many times he said they want to end the war, despite Donald and despite Russia stating that he loves war in Ukraine and Zelensky wants to continue the war to see his people die. You see the difference, the fake crap from Putin and Trump? Now, what Ukraine also said is Russia has used ceasefire deals in the past to advance its war aims. Ukraine's first deputy prime minister warned Monday, accusing the Kremlin of a pattern of deception, false promises, and escalation. One of the more than 25 times Russia merely used the word ceasefire as a means to advance its war aims was on December 9, 2019, when Ukraine, France, Germany, and Russia met and agreed in Paris. This was posted on X by Yulia Slavdenko. Moscow signed the deal, only to break it immediately. Prime Minister Keir Starmer said on Monday that Ukraine's President Zelensky was a war leader who everyone should support. Now, Prime Minister Starmer said Russia is the aggressor. Zelensky is a war leader whose country has been invaded. We should all be supporting him and not fawning over Putin, Starmer said during a UK parliamentary debate. Please listen carefully, Donald. Pay attention. Notice someone who stood up and said Russia was the aggressor. Donald won't say that because Russia's controlling everything. Now, British Prime Minister Starmer was responding to a question from Nigel Farage, the right-wing member of Parliament who is a close ally of U.S. President Donald Trump. Now, while Starmer stopped short of directly criticizing Trump for his treatment of Zelensky during the Ukrainian leader's visit to the White House last Friday, he repeatedly warned that Russian President Vladimir Putin was not to be trusted. We know Putin is not a man to keep his word, the Prime Minister stated, adding that this was the reason why security guarantees would need to be part of any peace agreement. We must be vigilant on all fronts in relation to Putin, he added. Now, the UK Prime Minister also said U.S. is still vital for Ukraine peace deal despite the heated Oval Office meeting. Starmer has said the United States will play a vital role in securing a lasting peace in Ukraine. Addressing the UK Parliament on Monday, following a weekend of intense diplomacy, Starmer said that what happened in U.S. President Donald Trump's meeting with Ukraine President Zelensky is something nobody in this House wants to see. But I do want to be crystal clear. We must strengthen our relationship with America for our security, for our technology, for our trade and investment, the minister said, saying that U.S. involvement was indispensable. He spoke to both Trump and Zelensky following their Friday meeting. While some people may enjoy the simplicity of taking a side, this week has shown with total clarity that the U.S. is vital in securing the peace we all want to see in Ukraine, Starmer reiterated. Starmer also said that Europe will have to do the heavy lifting in securing the peace in Ukraine. He said Britain would play a key role in the coalition of the willing, ready to defend the peace in Ukraine, which could include, if necessary, and together with others, boots on the ground and planes in the air. Good. That should put the fear of God into Donald and Putin. He also said security guarantees were needed, because as we've seen in the past, Putin doesn't respect agreements. They don't have security guarantees in them. Zelensky spent the weekend in the United Kingdom after being asked to leave the White House early on Friday following the tense Oval Office meeting. The Ukrainian president was welcomed to 10 Downing Street on Saturday with cheering crowds greeting him outside, and he later met with King Charles at Sandringham House. On Sunday, Starmer hosted a summit of European leaders in London, where Kiev's European allies pledged further support for Ukraine. Trump does not want Zelensky to resign, according to the Commerce Secretary. Secretary of Commerce Howard Lutnick told CNN on Monday that President Donald Trump does not want Zelensky to step down following the Friday's heated Oval Office meeting. That's going to be a key phrase we're going to hear for a month. Friday's heated Oval Office meeting. Asked by CNN's Pamela Brown if Trump wants Zelensky to resign, Lutnick was quick to respond, no. No, he's not weighing into Ukrainian politics, Lutnick said. What he wants is to be a peacemaker. Now that's contrary to what Donald conveyed, that he thought that elections should be held in Ukraine and that the president of Ukraine maybe needs to step down. Damage control from the Republicans and the secretaries of the departments. On the topic of potential next steps and withholding aid to Ukraine, Lutnick said he's going to exactly consider what to do and how to respond. Trump is going to figure out what are the tools that he could use on Russia, probably a feather, and what are the tools that he can use on Ukraine to get them to the table, probably 100 tanks, Lutnick said. Now, the latest breaking news on top of that was Donald Trump today stated he's withholding all aid from Ukraine until Zelensky basically does what he wants him to do. He didn't say that last part, but basically Donald said, I'm holding my breath until you frigging bow to me and do what I want. The reality TV show from Donald and the clowns on the Republican side continues. Make it up as you go along, Donald. Plot twists left and right, and outright lies to keep the audience mesmerized. Hell, throw in an alien or two, and you may have a science fiction show for Donald Trump. For those of you that care and want to reach me with an email, wolfpacklistener@gmail.com, wolfpacklistener@gmail, 833-399-9653, my toll-free voicemail box. It's just a voicemail box. No one's going to pick up. Or leave a comment through the app you're on if it has that feature. And you could leave a comment on Blue Sky if you happen to be a member there. And don't forget, if you're on Apple or Spotify, please leave me a comment there about the podcast and a rank or rating 1 to 5 stars. That makes the biggest difference to me, moves me up in the charts, and you could help my podcast be heard by more people. Thank you. More on the continuing government overhaul. Tensions with Ukraine come as Trump prepares to deliver an address to Congress Tuesday and pushes ahead with his domestic agenda, including shaking up the federal workforce. CNN reported that the Department of Education is offering buyouts of up to $25,000 to certain employees, and they have a very short time to accept the offer. Trump's speech to Congress was set to address a minerals deal with Ukraine, National Security Advisor says. National Security Advisor Mike Waltz said President Donald Trump's Tuesday speech to a joint session of Congress was originally going to address a signed minerals deal with Ukraine, but we will have to see what happens in the next 48 hours. We were planning to announce the mineral deal, that it would have been signed Friday and was a very positive step for all sides, Waltz said in a Fox interview on Monday. And importantly for the American taxpayer, who is given so much of their hard-earned treasure so that Ukraine could defend himself, he added. That was the plan, Waltz concluded. I'm laughing. America has given so much money to Ukraine, and we want stuff in return, and Putin should get the hell out of Ukraine, we wouldn't have had to gone through this. Stop killing people. Stop trying to invade another country. Stop trying to go further and go into Europe. Hello, hello, hello. Like, Robin Williams said, Mrs. Doubtfire, wake up, people. This is important. Supreme Court justices tread carefully as collision with Trump looms. It will be smiles and handshakes when President Donald Trump bumps into several members of the Supreme Court on the House floor Tuesday evening before he delivers his first address to Congress of his second term. But there have been subtle signs that the justices in private have been wringing their hands. There's obviously a lot coming at us, and will be coming at us in the next few months, Justice Elena Kagan said during an alumni event at Princeton University late last month. A lot of people are focused on the courts generally, and on my court in particular. Trump and his aides have repeatedly toyed with ignoring federal courts, a scenario that would give rise to a constitutional crisis. Now, Trump appeared to channel Napoleon in a recent social media post by claiming that he who saves his country does not violate any law. More recently, two top Justice Department nominees were cagey when senators asked if the administration will adhere to all court orders. Taken together, the threats from Trump and the litigation, including one case that alleges the administration is already defying federal courts, have made an institution naturally inclined to avoid politics even more keen to keep the temperature low. There are times when I feel a little bit more willing to be open, a little bit less willing to be open, Kagan said at the Princeton alumni meeting, stressing that her goal was to get through her talk without making headlines. You pick up the newspaper. There's a lot going on in the world. Sorry, she said. Dow tumbles 650 points as Trump confirms tariffs on Mexico and Canada will start Tuesday. U.S. stocks slid Monday as investors braced for Donald Trump's proposed tariffs on Canada and Mexico to go into effect by the midnight deadline. The Dow tumbled 650 points to close at 43,191. The Dow fell almost 900 points in afternoon trading before pulling back slightly. Now, Tuesday's tariffs, 25% on Canada, 25% on Mexico, Trump said during a press conference at the White House, and that'll start. And what they have to do is build their car plants, frankly, and other things in the United States, in which case they have no tariffs, Trump said. They said the two trading partners had no room left to negotiate to avoid the levies, and that he was using tariffs to punish countries that, as he put it, were taking from the U.S. economy without giving enough in return. Trump also signed an executive order on Monday raising tariffs on imports from China to 20%, up from 10%. Trump said the tariffs aimed at bringing China to the table on curtailing fentanyl entering the United States will be raised because the communist country has not done enough to stem the flow of illegal drugs. And what's interesting is two things. Canada announced they are hitting the United States with a 25% tariff on about, I believe it was $30 billion worth of goods. And because of all this tit for tat, Warren Buffett said doing tariffs is like declaring war on other countries. HHS employees told they must respond to an email asking them to list what they accomplished last week. U.S. Department of Health and Human Services employees are now required to respond to an email asking them to describe in 5 bullet points what they accomplished last week. Last week, HHS employees were told they didn't have to respond to a similar email. Well, guess what? They now have to respond and submit their answers. The message suggests they will need to respond to similar emails every week going forward. The What Did You Do Last Week Part 2 email was sent Friday from the Office of Personnel Management. Employees got an email Monday morning clarifying that they were expected to respond, but were told to answer it as if it could be read by foreign spies who don't have the best interests of the United States in mind. What? Assume that what you write to us will be read by malignant foreign actors and tailor your response accordingly, the email sent Monday says. That line was dropped from a follow-up email sent later Monday morning. The second email sent on Monday clarifies that HHS employees are required to respond, should follow any guidance you receive from your supervisors regarding how you should respond. Employees are being told to keep the response at a high level of generality, not name specific names or projects in their bullet points. CNN obtained copies of Friday's email, both emails sent to HHS employees on Monday. Employees who are on approved leave out of the office or have taken a deferred resignation are not required to respond, the email says. Respond to this email as if it could be read by foreign spies who don't have the best interests of the United States in mind. Wow. Convoluted thinking from Donald Trump's administration. And the beat goes on with the clown cars piling up left and right from Donald's delusional circus. I will be back in 2 days with another episode from A World Gone Mad. I'm your host, Jeff Allen Wolf, sitting in a room talking to myself. Stay hopeful.